Just a minute, please. Can you see the slides moving?
No, ma'am, slides are not moving.
Okay,
View
just a
full
minute.
screen message, then click
I'll
on
do
the
it
slide.
again. Just a minute.
Ma'am, please share it again.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. So we'll start with we'll continue with the topic as in previous lecture, that is gastric adenocarcinomas. Please confirm that you can see the slides and hear my voice clearly.
मैम वॉइस इज क्लियर, आपकी स्लाइड भी नजर आ रही है, आप मूव करके चेक करें स्लाइड मूव हो रही है या नहीं फर्स्ट.
Just see it, please.
आई थिंक मैम स्लाइड्स आर नॉट मूविंग. आप प्लीज इसे दोबारा शेयर कर लें प्रेजेंटेशन.
Can you see them moving now?
नो मैम, आपने शेयर किया दोबारा स्क्रीन.
जी मैंने दोबारा शेयर किया. टाइटल सेम है, नीचे सब टाइटल पढ़िए.
आप फिर एक काम करें, दोबारा ज्वाइन करें मीटिंग लीव करके दोबारा ज्वाइन करें. मैं आपको कोस्ट बनाऊँ तो फिर ओके आप मूव कर रही है मैम.
ठीक है. Can you see the screen now?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, it's now moving.
Okay. We'll continue with the last topic in the last lecture, that is gastric adenocarcinomas. These are one of the most common malignancies in stomach and make up to 90% of the gastric cancers. They can be of two types, that is intestinal type and diffuse type. Intestinal is when they form the bulky masses which are either protruding in the form of polyps or large masses. The diffuse type is it is an infiltrate within the wall of stomach. It gives an impression of hard stomach wall instead of a bulky mass. The incidence is markedly varied as per geography. These are more common in Japan, Chile, Costa Rica, the areas where there are certain types of processed food usage or high certain kind of chilies intake and certain food types. The mass screening programs in these regions have been is very successful at detecting the early stage cancers. The precursor lesions for gastric adenocarcinomas are gastric dysplasia, adenomas, and intestinal metaplasia. Patients who have partial gastrectomies have an increased risk at residual gastric stump carcinoma development due to hypochlorhydria, bile reflux, and chronic gastritis. Pathogenesis, first of all, they can be familial or sporadic. The familial have germline mutations with the suppressor gene CDH1 in EEC adherent. The loss of EEC adherent is a key step in development of diffuse gastric cancers. Mutations of BRCA2 and TP53 are also found in sporadic cases, both intestinal and diffuse type. So the sporadic cancers are associated with mutations which result in increased signaling via WNT pathway. This includes the loss of functional mutations in APC, adenomatous polyposis coli tumor suppressor gene, and gain of functional mutations of genes encoding beta-catenin. So you have to remember the topic of tumor suppressor genes in WNT pathway as you studied in detail in third year. The infections which are associated with development of gastric carcinomas are H. pylori. Long-standing H. pylori infection can act as a precursor or eventually leads to the development of gastric CA. Morphologically, they are classified as per their location and histological morphology. Most gastric carcinomas involve antrum and lesser curvature than greater curvature. They can be exophytic masses or ulcerative tumors or diffuse growth within the wall. Morphologically, if these are of intestinal type, they form neoplastic glandular structures containing mucin. And mucin is also present in glandular lumina. Diffuse gastric types, these are composed of individual cells, which is as a result of EEC adherent loss. These cells are dispersed in sheets. And excuse me, can you please confirm that you're able to listen to me?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. So there can be have large vacuoles when they are dispersed as individual cells, which contain mucin towards one side. This kind of appearance is known as segment ring cell appearance. Excuse me. The desmoplastic reaction. Desmoplastic reaction means the tissue reaction surrounding the tumor cells and glands. When this there is an exaggerated desmoplastic reaction, the stomach wall becomes thickened, rugal folds are lost, and then it is termed as what you call as lenitis plastica or leather bottle appearance. So the stomach, instead of appearing soft and the usual kind of an appearance, gives an appearance of जैसे वो leather bottles पुराने जमाने में होती थी जिन्हें पानी के अंदर शकीज़े कहते थे, that leather bottle appearance की जो bottles use होती है for warming, उस kind की appearance. This is an ulcerating tumor in the upper picture. The lower one also shows the loss of rugal folds and development of an ulcer. This is how the gastric adenocarcinomas look like. In the upper picture, you can see neoplastic glands, which are lined by hyperchromatic cells with high NC ratio. In the lower diagram, you see diffuse pattern, but there are cells which have these vacuolated cytoplasms and nucleus pushed towards one side. This is the appearance called signet ring cell appearance. This is another form of a well-differentiated adenocarcinoma. Clinically, they present usually at an older or middle age. The depth of invasion and extent of nodal masses at the time of diagnosis are more powerful diagnostic indicators. Not actually diagnostic, sorry, this is a miswriting, prognostic indicators in gastric carcinomas. So how deep it is and what kind of lymph nodes are involved will determine the prognosis. Local invasion into duodenum, pancreas, and retroperitoneum can occur. If it is locally extensively spreaded tumor, then the chemo, radiation, or palliative care is important. Rather, when the tumor is limited to stomach wall, the patient is usually goes under primary resection. The survival, 5-year survival is 90% and last stage is 30%. The most common lymph nodes involved because of metastasis, please note down, these are very important in terms of MCQs and vivas, are supraclavicular lymph nodes, which is known as Virchow node. Periumbilical spread of adenocarcinoma is known as Sister Mary Joseph nodule. जिन लोगों के नामों पे ये डायग्नोज हुए थे या हुए थे उन्हीं के नामों पर इनके नाम हैं. And the left axillary lymph nodes. So unlike the if there's bilateral involvement of ovarian or unilateral involvement of ovarian tumor by metastasis of stomach carcinomas, these are then called Krukenberg tumor. Stomach के वाले को नहीं कहेंगे, यानी अगर ओवरी में stomach का ट्यूमर फैला हुआ है, which is a pretty, I can't say very common, लेकिन frequently देखा जा सकता है. वाइड स्प्रेड ट्यूमर्स के केसेस में अगर पाउच ऑफ डगलस में अनलाइकली है ज्यादातर ओवरी को इन्वॉल्व करे, तो फिर ओवरी में बैठे हुए मेटास्टेटिक ट्यूमर को आप क्रूकेनबर्ग ट्यूमर. नेक्स्ट कम्स द malignancies, that is lymphomas. Extranodal lymphomas can be seen in GIT, especially in stomach. The GIT in gastrointestinal tract, these are known as malt lymphomas or maltomas. Malt अगर आपको याद हो तो हमने पढ़ा था lymphoma of lymphoid tissue, हमने कहा था associated mucosa associated lymphoid tissue. When the lymphoma occurs along with this, we call them maltoma. So the mucosa associated with lymphoid tissue acts as a precursor for maltomas. Pathogenesis, it occurs usually at the site of chronic inflammation. They can arise in GIT at the site of pre-existing malt mucosa associated lymphoid tissue, and in stomach because of H. pylori induced inflammation. Practically, they are very difficult to on biopsy to diagnose because there is a very quite overlap. So if we see a patient with mucosa associated with lymphoid tissue, it is important that you eradicate H. pylori infection to prevent development of lymphoma. Maltomas can transform into more aggressive tumors such as large diffuse large B-cell lymphomas. Morphologically, there is dense lymphocytic infiltrated lamina propria. Neoplastic lymphocytes infiltrate the glands focally. The active appearing B lymphoid follicles may be present in 40% tumors. Plasmacytic differentiation can be seen. These may be present in small nodules or infiltrate the wall diffusely. Maltomas express B cell markers. B cell markers are the stains or immunostains which highlight B type lymphocytes. Most common one are CD19 and CD20. Clinically, patients present with epigastric pain and dyspepsia. Hematemesis, bulimia, and weight loss can also be there. This is how the gastric lymphomas look like. Probably you see a fleshy kind of appearance of small nodules आपको नजर आ रहे हैं छोटे-छोटे on gastric mucosa. Sometimes endoscopy पे कोई भी lesion present नहीं होता और routine biopsy के ये complaint upon symptoms की biopsy के ऊपर you can see the lymphoma. Here the normal on the left side of the picture, the normal structure of the mucosa is gone. So there are on the higher focus, you can see the glands which are containing now these small kind of lymphocytes. This is forming the malt, and this is the malt associated lymphoma. Other tumors which can occur in stomach are carcinoid. They arise from the different components of endocrine system and are referred as well differentiated neuroendocrine tumors. So better the carcinoid term is no more used in GIT. Carcinoid एक conventional term थी जो कि benign या low grade neuroendocrine tumors को कहा जाता है. आपकी बुक में अभी भी ये term use की है, इस वजह से मैंने भी mention कर दी है. But for all practical purposes or up to latest studies in GIT, now you call them well differentiated, moderately differentiated, yeah, grade 1, grade 2, and grade 3 neuroendocrine tumors, depending upon how well differentiated they are. The gastric carcinoid or neuroendocrine tumors are associated with endocrine cell hyperplasia, autoimmune disorders, atrophic gastritis, MEN1, Zollinger-Ellison syndrome, and in some cases, it is thought that the proton pump inhibitor therapy can lead to gastric endocrine cell hyperplasia and eventually development of carcinoid or neuroendocrine tumors. Grossly, the carcinoid tumors are intramural or submucosal masses that create small polypoidal lesions. The overlying mucosa is usually intact or maybe ulcerated, but is not actively participating in the display. Usually, बताने का मकसद ये है कि dysplasia नजर नहीं आता. These can be yellow or tan in color and are very firm because of dysplastic reaction. Microscopically, they are composed of islands, tuberculi, glands, and strands of neuroendocrine cells showing round to oval stippled nucleus and scanty granular cytoplasm. Pleomorphism is uncommon, but mitosis, anaplasia, and necrosis is seen. They are positive for markers like immunomarkers like synaptophysin and chromogranin A. Neuroendocrine tumors are usually classified or graded as on the basis of mitosis and their proliferation index. So these are the various kind of, this is a submucosal neuroendocrine tumor. You can see how well circumscribed and blue it appears. On the closer picture in D, you see this chromatin. आपको ऐसा लग रहा है जैसे न्यूक्लियस के अंदर किसी ने मार्कर से डॉट्स लगाए हैं. This is what we call salt and peppery or stippled chromatin. For a histopathologist, it is very diagnostic of neuroendocrine tumors. We can usually pick it up without doing immunos and let the doctor know that it appears as a neuroendocrine tumor or carcinoma. Clinically, they occur in the later decades of life. Symptoms can be because of the excessive hormone production like gastrin. These, if they occur at other places like ileal tumors, they can cause carcinoid syndrome, which is characterized by cutaneous flushing, bronchospasm, colicky abdominal pain, diarrhea, right-sided cardiac valvular fibrosis. Why all these kind of symptoms? Because they are secreting hormones, which will be causing all these symptoms. Carcinoid syndrome can occur in usually less than 10% of the tumors and is caused by vasoactive substances or related hormones secreted by tumor into the circulation. The important topic which you need to remember for stomach is another malignancy or a neoplastic lesion, that is GIST. We call it GIST or gastrointestinal stromal tumor. So the variety of mesenchymal tumors may arise in stomach. जो बाकी, it is a part of gastrointestinal tumor is also a part of mesenchymal tumors. अब तक हम epithelial tumors पढ़ रहे थे, फिर neuroendocrine tumor पढ़ रहे हैं, अब हम mesenchymal tumors देख रहे हैं of stomach. So mesenchymal में leiomyomas हो सकते हैं. It can be leiomyosarcomas, schwannomas, or glomus tumors. Among them, leiomyomas are very common. Another thing which is very common is the gastrointestinal stromal tumor or GIST. It is the most common mesenchymal stromal tumor of abdomen. The annual incidence varies from 11 to 20%. Of all the GISTs occurring in body, more than half arise in stomach. These are thought to arise from the interstitial cells of Kagel or pacemaker cells of muscular layer. So there are certain interstitial cells which are thought to be responsible for peristaltic movement or coordinated movement of GIT. These are called the pacemaker or the movement generating cells of the muscle layer of GIT. Gastrointestinal stromal tumors are thought to arise from these cells. Crossly, these tumors form well circumscribed fleshy masses. The overlying mucosa can be ulcerated or intact. The location of these tumors is very important, that is submucosa. They can show variable size. Multiple stromal nodules or peritone metastasis is rare outside the abdominal cavity. So the within the abdominal cavity, metastasis can occur, but it is usually not heard of कि GIST आपके किसी और lymph node में पहुंच गया या कहीं और. Microscopically, they can be spindle shaped or epithelioid or mixed based upon the appearance. Mixture of two can occur. The diagnostic immunomarker is c-KIT. KIT या इसका दूसरा नाम होता है CD117 and DOG1. DOG1 जो है, it stands for diagnosed on GIST की abbreviation है 1. These are quite diagnostic markers. If the tumor appears reactive to these stains, we can very easily label them GIST or gastrointestinal stromal tumor. So this is how they appear. This is basically mucosa protruding, लेकिन वैसे mucosa ऊपर intact है. On the diagram picture, you can see a spindle and epithelioid kind of a proliferation. A more diagnostic picture. So you see kind of spindle fascicles hai, spindle cells ke, and then they are showing this kind of pink cytoplasmic projections. So the location, if I see that they are located below the mucosa in submucosal region and have a spindle characteristic, I can almost tell them very confidently that it will most likely be a gastrointestinal stromal tumor. So what is the treatment for gastrointestinal stromal tumor? It is basically whether there is resection. And what determines their prognosis is their size and mitotic figures. It will tell whether they are low risk, high risk, or moderate risk or high risk. Based upon the risk, the oncologist will tell the patient that what are the chances of reoccurrence or it may not reoccur. So with this, the stomach ends. Now we'll continue with the small bowel and colon. Please confirm, can you see the slide change? I've changed the lecture into small intestine and colon.
Yes, ma'am. We can see the
Okay.
slide.
Okay. So we'll continue with the non-neoplastic lesions of small bowel and colon. They usually make up the majority of the GIT because of their size and have site of many diseases. Disturbance in water and nutrient absorption can lead to diarrhea or malabsorption. Intestinal obstructions can be due to hernias, adhesions, intussusception, and volvulus, which accounts for 80% of mechanical obstructions. Other obstructions can be due to tumor, infarcts, Crohn's disease, and other strictures. So there's a variety of actually diseases which can involve the small bowel and colon. First of all, hernias. Hernias is basically protrusion of the small bowel into a place outside the peritoneal cavity. Hernias are basically defect in the interior abdominal walls. So small bowel or any part of bowel can get entrapped and produce an effect of obstruction. Adhesions, prior surgeries, or certain genetic makeup, if the patient has certain autoimmune disorder like sclerosing diseases, these result in excessive adhesions around. Adhesions means fibrous tissue develop ho jata hai around the bowel wall, causing adhesions. Volvulus means that apne hi axis pe wo rotate kar jata hai. Intussusception means that one part of the segment of intestine अपने ही ऊपर जो है move in कर जाए. So this is how this looks like. Hernia, defect in the anterior abdominal wall or ventral surface of peritoneum, and there's protrusion of the bowel wall and entrapment. Adhesion between two bowel walls. There is excessive fibrous tissue production. Volvulus, it has a twist or kink. And this is what the intussusception. इतनी तेज peristaltic movement एक segment की है कि उसने दूसरे segment के अंदर close किया है. So the other segment is basically enveloping the proximal segment. So this is how grossly the obstruction can look like. We'll discuss in detail what is the ischemic bowel disease. So gastrointestinal tract is supplied by celiac, inferior or superior mesenteric arteries, and collateral circulations. Acute compromise of any major vessel can lead to infarction of several centimeters of intestine. So one of the specimens in biopsy or histopathology we frequently receive is ischemic bowel fragment. Because of any compromise in the major blood vessel, what happens is that there's a part of intestine which loses the supply, and because it is very sensitive to any compromise in supply, the whole part of the segment, whole part of the intestine results in infarction and death of that tissue. Causes includes severe atherosclerosis, aortic aneurysm, hypercoagulable states, oral contraceptive use, embolization of vegetations or erythromas, systemic vasculitis such as polyarteritis nodosa, and Henoch-Schönlein purpura. Mesenteric thrombosis, for all the cases I see in my routine practice, are usually associated with mesenteric vessels thrombosis. You can commonly pick them up in the biopsy specimens also. So then there can be intestinal hyperperfusion, which is secondarily associated with cardiac failure, shock, or dehydration, or certain use of vasoconstrictive drugs. Pathogenesis is that initial response to ischemia occur in two phases. As please recall your third year knowledge, there is an initial hypoxic injury. So there is a vascular compromise and resulting in an initial hypoxic injury, which will be due to be depleted oxygen production and excessive carbon dioxide production, resulting in the damage local where normal आपकी hydrogen potassium pump ATPase की movement खराब हो जाएगी. In secondary phase, there's reperfusion injury. So the tissue which was initially vascularly compromised will now be subjected to the fresh blood or the heavy restoration of blood supply, resulting in free radical oxygen production and now the reperfusion injury will occur. In severe cases, this scenario can lead to multi-organ failure. The underlying pathological mechanism for reperfusion injury includes leakage of gut lumen bacterial products, that is lipopolysaccharides, into systemic circulation, free radical production, neutrophil infiltrate, and release of inflammatory mediators. So what happened is that in the time where there was a compromised circulation of the bowel wall, हमारे normal flora होता है bowel wall के lumen. Instead of जो कि पहले जिनके साथ हमारा commensal kind of relationship होता है, in case of reperfusion injury or compromised blood supply, they start acting like your own enemies and get into the systemic circulation causing multi-organ failure or severe sepsis. Ischemic damage is also contributed by watershed zones. Watershed zones, ये आपका task है. I'll be asking you in the next lecture what are watershed zones in GIT. Sites यहाँ पर बताई नहीं है. Ischemic fracture is one of them, sigmoid colon and rectum. But why they are called watershed zone? This is a home assignment to you. I'll be asking randomly with roll numbers in the next lecture. The surface epithelium is more vulnerable to ischemic injury than Krebs. So mucosa is farther away from the blood supply. Mucosa or lamina propria के अंदर actually major blood vessels नहीं होती. It is more kind of जिस तरह the main blood vessels end up usually in the submucosa, and then there is kind of diffuse production supply of blood towards the mucosa. So the farther the area is from the main blood supply, more is the damage. So the damage will start with mucosa or surface epithelium. So these are the potential sites of ischemia. These are what we just read are the watershed zones. Why are they watershed zones? That you'll be telling me on Saturday. Ischemic bowel disease, morphologically, they can any part of intestine can undergo ischemic injury. The color is the most colon is the most common site. The region can be continuous, segmental, or patchy. There's transmural infarction due to acute arterial obstruction. Demarcation between the normal and infarcted segment is sharp. So this guides the surgeon to what part or what extent he has to do the surgery. Infarcted part is initially congested, dusky purple red, and later blood-tinged mucosa of frank blood can accumulate in the lumen. Wall is edematous, thick, and rubbery, and when there is an extreme infarction or a prolonged rhythm, it can actually thin out. In case of mesenteric venous thrombosis, less abrupt transition is seen. So अगर arterial obstruction होगा तो infarction बिल्कुल well demarcated होगी. In case of venous obstruction, there will be a little less abrupt transition. So there will be area which will be extremely dark in color because of the loss of oxygenated arterial blood supply, or then there will be venous pooling, which can be producing similar kind of effect, but the color will be a little shady. Microscopically, atrophy and sloughing of surface epithelium is seen. Krebs may show hyperproliferation. There can be neutrophils seen along reperfusion. Coagulative necrosis of muscle if this is continued for 1 to 4 days. And serositis, that is inflammation of serosa with purulent exudate, may also be present. In chronic ischemic, fibrous scarring of lamina propria is seen. So this kind of guides us if we see a biopsy and see ischemic fibrosis or fibrous tissue within the lamina propria and smaller glands. It indicates that this lesion is probably occurring for a long-standing time period and is associated with vascular. In both acute and chronic ischemic bacterial superinfection, enterotoxin may release, resulting in pseudomembrane formation. अलग से भी Clostridium difficile infection होती है, which is pseudomembrane colitis. But if the ischemia is there, it will be more, the patient is more prone to develop this infection. So phases of ischemic colitis are transient ischemia, mucosa infarction in which the ischemic damage is confined to mucosa. This is reversible. As I told you previously, in 1 to 3 days, whole of the mucosal lining of the GI tract can be replaced. Partial thickness ischemia, the mural infarction. Mural means muscle, in which injury extends from mucosa into muscularis mucosa, and full thickness. Transmural means कि muscle को cross करके serosa तक चलेगी. The second and third part are not reversible, and you need to resect this the segment. This is again the repetition. This is how it looks like. Excuse me. Mucosa infarct हो रहा है, बाकी layers intact हैं. Mural infarction in mucosa खत्म, transmural में भी. Then there is partly involvement of the muscularis propria. In case of transmural involvement, whole of the muscle is necrosed or ischemic, and this is occurring deeper. In mural infarction, a part of muscularis mucosa will be affected, some part will be preserved. This is how grossly it looks like. The bowel wall on appearance shows dusky brown or purplish color. On opening, the mucosa appears very dark instead of red, usual hyperemic type. And correspondingly, you see a lot of congestion in the mucosa. The mucosal crypts are, however, right now intact. Clinically, acute colonic ischemia may present with sudden onset of cramping and lower abdominal pain, passage of blood and blood diarrhea. In severe cases, patients can go into shock because of loss of blood. Physical signs are of paralytic ileus. Paralytic ileus होता है कि bowel sounds नहीं आ रही. Guarding and rebound tenderness develops in the abdomen. These physical signs overlap with acute appendicitis or those of perforated ulcer or cholecystitis. The diagnosis of intestinal necrosis may be delayed and misled if misled can lead to disastrous consequences. Why? As we just discussed कि जो आपकी normal flora है gut का वो thinned out wall के through या ischemic gut के through system में systemic circulation में enter हो सकता है and can cause sepsis. Cytomegalo viral infections, radiations, and necrotizing enterocolitis can also lead to bowel ischemia. So the next topic we'll move to is malabsorption and diarrhea. Malabsorption is characterized by defective absorption of fat, water, soluble vitamins, proteins, carbohydrates, electrolytes, minerals, or water. Malabsorption can present as chronic diarrhea and can result from disturbance in one of the 4 phases of nutritional absorption. Either the intraluminal digestion is compromised, or terminal digestion is compromised, transepithelial transport is hampered, or lymphatic transport of absorbed lipid is hampered. Then there are terms such as diarrhea. Diarrhea is an increase in stool mass, frequency of fluidity greater than 200 grams per day. Dysentery is diarrhea which involves blood. There can be secretory diarrhea or osmotic diarrhea, malabsorption diarrhea, exudative diarrhea. You do not need to know the quite great details of them. Let's skip them and move forward. One of the most common malabsorption syndrome and very important one which you interact in the duodenum commonly is known as celiac disease. The other name for it is celiac screw or gluten sensitivity enteropathy. It is an immune-mediated enteropathy triggered by ingestion of gluten present in foods such as wheat, rye, or barley. These are genetically predisposed individuals which lack the system to absorb or which develop the antibodies against these gluten components of food. It is triggered by the eating gluten, which is a major storage protein of wheat and similar grains. The portion of this gluten is alcohol soluble portion is known as gliadin, which contains most disease producing component. Gluten is ingested by luminal brush border enzymes into amino acids and peptides, including a 33 amino acid alpha gliadin peptide that is resistant to degradation by gastric, pancreatic, and small intestinal proteases. Some gliadin peptides may include epithelial cells to express interleukin 15, which in turn triggers activation and proliferation of cytotoxic, that is CD8 intraepithelial lymphocytes. This is the underlying phenomena. basically there's a deficient peptide which is to digest the gliadin. That gliadin which persists triggers interleukin 15, which in turn triggers the cytotoxic or CD8 intraepithelial lymphocytes. These lymphocytes, what they do is that they employ the natural killer T cells, and these natural killer T cells and the cytokines attack the lymphocytes, resulting in epithelial damage. This extensive epithelial damage results in malabsorption. So let's revise it. The gluten, that is the protein part which occurs in grains like wheat and rye, has a subcomponent known as gliadin. This gliadin is usually absorbed or divided into amino acids and peptides by a 33 amino acid alpha gliadin peptide, which in case of celiac disease does not work well and does not digest the gliadin. These gliadin peptides induce interleukin 15 and CD8 lymphocytes. These lymphocytes are natural, can induce natural killer cells and receptors for MYC-A. This MYC-A is basically which induces apoptosis or cell death. The cells which are now marked with the MYC-A and along with natural killer T cells kill the enterocytes, resulting in epithelial damage and malabsorption. This is the similar part which I just told you. This will be a good diagrammatic representation if somebody asks you about the pathogenesis of celiac disease. As a result of this epithelial damage, the gliadin peptides enter into lamina propria. Gliadin is deaminated by tissue transglutaminase. So these gliadin peptides will interact with HLA-DQ or HLA-DQ8 antigen presenting on cell and stimulate helper T cells, which will now secrete the cytokines and further cause the tissue damage. So एक मसला तो पहले चल ही रहा था कि आपके cytotoxic cells आपके epithelial cells को damage कर रहे हैं, लेकिन a part of this gliadin peptide will now enter the lamina propria and will be transported by tissue transglutaminase. They will identify cells जिनके ऊपर ये वाली phenotype हो. हमारी body का एक genetic makeup है HLA, DQ and DQ8. So the patients who will be having these body type, the antigen will present and stimulate the helper T cells there, which will further cause the damage. All people with celiac disease carry class 2 HLA-DQ or HLA-D8 allele. Other genetic factors include the pleomorphism of genes involved in immune regulation and epithelial function. So it is a multifactorial kind of a disease, but primarily आपको दो बातें याद रखनी है. This sequence कि gliadin digest नहीं हो रहा, वो interleukin 15 और cytotoxic cells को induce कर रहा है. They will call natural killer cells and make A on lymphocyte causing epithelial damage. Secondarily, gliadin through transglutaminase will identify कि किन cells के ऊपर HLA, DQ और DQ8 है और वहां पे वो helper T cells को call करेगा, which will cause further damage. So both contribute. This is again the representation. The gluten, ये gluten का एक component है. इसका एक part है gliadin. Gliadin is entering into cell through tissue transglutaminase. Lamina propria में enter हुआ है, and what it will do, it will find the cells which have HLA, DQ or D8 phenotype. वहां पे बैठकर it will call the T cells to damage the tissue. आपको पता है कि जो हमारे CD4 cells या helper T cells होते हैं, what they do is that they cause, अगर आप recall करें function को, तो बहुत सारी उनकी और jobs में एक उनकी prominent job है that they call B cells for antibody production. So in case यहाँ पर जब gliadin ने जाकर HLA, DQ और D8 cells को identify किया, T cell receptors को activate किया और helper T cells को call किया, तो साथ ही stimulation
Madam, just 5 minutes left.
ठीक है, stimulation हो गई of B cells which will now produce antibodies जो हम clinically use करते हैं celiac disease को diagnose करने के लिए. That is anti-tissue transglutaminase, anti-tissue gliadin and anti-endomysial antibodies. Here in the picture you can see. मुझे ये तीनों इसलिए कॉमनली याद है कि हम बहुत कॉमनली करवाते हैं, कॉमनली देखते हैं. आप इतना वरी ना करें. अगर आपको इन तीनों में से कोई याद रखनी होगी तो एंटी टिश्यू ट्रांसग्लूटामिनेज एंटीबॉडीज आपने याद रखनी. These antibodies will again act against the duodenal epithelial cells and causing further damage. So again, in 5 minutes a repetition. One, gluten का part होता है gliadin जिसको amino peptides digest करते हैं. If you lack that peptide, gliadin will not be digested, will cause production of interleukin 15 and employ natural killer T cells and will identify cells which have NIC-A genotype. What happens is that the cells will be attacking those natural killer cells, and cytotoxic T cells will attack lymphocytes and kill them. Two, gliadin enters into lamina propria through tissue transglutaminase, identifies cells which have HLA-DQ or D8 type, employs helper T cells and kill the cells which have HLA-DQ or D8 type. Those cells which were the helper T cells also induce production of B cell antibodies, which in this case are anti-tissue transglutaminase, anti-endomysial, and anti-gliadin. These antibodies will again cause damage, and all these three processes will result in damage of the normal villus architecture of the small bowel and cause malabsorption. So we'll just end here and we'll continue with the microscopic morphology of the small bowel in the next lecture in case of celiac disease, and we'll go through this pathogenesis once more. So we'll continue and we'll see you in the lecture on Saturday.